All right, again, my name is James. I am a video production specialist here at Videoguys. If you have any questions about anything that we talk about today, definitely make sure to give us a call at 800-323-2325. And there's a good chance that you will get me on the phone or Adam or Jenny or anybody else on our team, and we will get you the answer. I'm going to give you one other piece of advice today. We are going to be talking about a lot of stuff. I'm going to still try and keep it to 20-25 minutes at most. If you have any questions about anything, any specific drive or memory card or RAID system or NAS system that we talk about today, and you want a dedicated show to that specific storage solution, comment down below and we will make sure that we reach out to our manufacturers, get them to join us in one of these shows and talk about it in a deep dive. This is going to be a high-level overview. So let's get right into it. We're going to be talking about 4 different areas of storage. We're going to talk about on-camera storage with memory cards and card readers. We're going to talk about portable SSDs, typically rugged SSDs. We're going to talk about being at your desk at the end of the day with HDDs, SSDs, and even RAID systems. And then we're going to talk about working with a team all working on the same system, whether it's something like Iodine's new ProData or a NAS system. So, part 1, on-camera memory. Memory cards. There are different types of memory cards out there, and different cameras require different memory cards. And the most popular are going to be micro SD cards, SD cards, CF Express cards, and CFast cards. These are, pretty basic. They're very small. They go on the camera. The camera records directly to the SSD card, to the memory card, and then you take it out and you plug it into a card reader at the end of the day. One thing that you're going to want to take into consideration when you're looking at memory cards is specifically the read and write speed. Now, if you got a camera that can if you have a memory card that's transferring at 100 megabytes per second, it may be okay with 1080 60p and Rec 709 or something like that. But if you're going to be doing some ProRes and RAW and 4K and potentially high frame rates, you're going to want to make sure that whatever the camera, when you're looking at your camera specs, don't just look at what type of memory card it requires, but also what its minimum or recommended read and write speed is to make sure that it can handle every resolution and codec and frame rate that your camera can do. So definitely take that into consideration when you're looking at memory cards. Obviously, once you're done with your shoot, you got to get that data off of the memory card and onto a computer or a external hard drive like this. Now, different cards, again, require different card readers. So you're going to want to make sure that you get the right kind of card reader for your memory card. The great thing about some manufacturers now are that the cost has come down drastically in these, and now you can get card readers that have multiple types of cards that they can read all at the same time. So even if you have different cameras that you're using and they take different cards, well, now you don't need to get a card reader for each one. You can actually just get a card reader that has all of the cards be able to be read by that reader. And even some of the external hard drives that we offer, like this drive right here, have card readers built into them so you can offload directly from your memory card to your external hard drive. Now, like I said, the big thing that you're going to want to take into consideration when you're looking at your cameras and looking at getting memory cards for those cameras is to make sure that it has the right read and write speed. You can give us a call at 800-323-2325. Give us the name of your camera. We will go to the manufacturer's website and we will help you find the read and write speed requirements and make sure that the card that you're looking at is going to work in the car and the camera that you have. So definitely give us a call. The next thing that I want to talk about is portable drives. Now, when somebody thinks of an Atomos monitor, they don't always think recorder, but hey, yes, they are also recorders. They're Atomos monitor and recorders, and now also encoders. So we wanted to make it known that you can get something like this Shogun or Shogun Ultra, and on the back of it, there is a spot that you can plug in an Angel Bird SSD card and be able to record in super high resolution, super high codecs, high frame rates, and things like that. You know, with the Shogun Ultra, you can record up to 8K 30 ProRes. So that's one thing that you'll want to take into consideration when you're looking at a monitor. Can I get, you know, more bang for my buck by getting a monitor and recorder? And then also, it's not really storage, but it kind of plays into it. Take into consideration too that the new Connect modules and Shogun Connect can also send a proxy file up to the cloud to have your editor be able to edit it immediately. You know, with all of these, you know, faster and faster cables and bigger drives, and it's all about now taking time to transfer your data before your editors can start working. And you know what they say, time is money. So if you can send a proxy file to the cloud at the end of the day and your editor can start working on it immediately, well, now you're saving money because they're editing that proxy file, and then you can transfer your hero file at a, you know, a later date, and it's just going to speed up the process. Now, the most common type of portable drive is going to be a rugged SSD drive. Most every manufacturer makes some kind of portable SSD drive. You know, we have a couple up here. We have one from LaCie, we have one from SanDisk, OWC makes one, Glyph makes one, everybody makes one. Now, what makes these stand out are a couple key things. A, they're portable, they're very small. B, they are SSDs, which are extremely fast drives, and there are no moving parts in them because they're SSDs, they're not HDDs. So that means that they are less susceptible to having pieces break on the inside. And then also the fact that because these are rugged drives, that means that most of them have some level of either water resistance or dust resistance or shock resistance. And it just makes it the perfect drive to take out in the field when you need to have your storage on the go. You know, at the end of the day, put your dailies, copy them onto a couple portable rugged SSD drives. Now, when it comes to finding the right drive for you, different drives have different, you know, water resistance levels, different shock resistance levels, different dust resistance levels, and it really depends on where you're going to be taking that drive. And we will help you find the right drive for your on-the-go productions. The next thing that we want to talk about is working at a desk, you know, having desktop storage. And before we got into that, I kind of wanted to just take a second here to explain the different types of connections that are available on the market. The standard for the longest time was, you know, your standard square USB-C, USB-A, excuse me. So if we look at this, you know, your typical rectangular USB-A. Now, these were the standard, they're not quite the standard anymore. The big thing with these are that they're limited to, you know, 5 or 10 gigabytes per second, and that's not going to be great. The next thing that came out, and I would say is the standard now, is USB-C. Now, USB-C is a smaller connection point, ovular, and with USB-C 3.1 and USB 4, you can get speeds upwards of 20 gigabytes per second, which is great. But if you want the latest and the greatest, that's when you're going to want to take into consideration looking at a drive that has Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4 connectivity. Now, Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 4 are the same USB shape and size, but with Thunderbolt 3 and 4, you can get transfer speeds upwards of 40 gigabytes per second. Now, that's a lot of data, but as our files get bigger and bigger, you need to have faster and faster transfer speeds. Now, one thing that you're going to want to take into consideration when you're looking at this is it doesn't matter how fast the drive is and how fast the port on the drive is if your computer doesn't have the proper port on it. So if your computer only has USB-A ports, you are going to be limited to USB-A speeds. You're not going to get 40 gigabytes per second on a computer that only has USB-A drive ports. So when you're looking at drives, take that into consideration. Keep that in the back of your mind. If you're not looking to upgrade your computer anytime soon, maybe don't go for a drive that has Thunderbolt 3 capabilities on it. Maybe just get one that has USB-C, because even if you get a converter to go from USB-A to USB-C, you're still going to be limited to the speed of USB-A. Now that we got those out of the way, let's talk about some drives. First thing I want to talk about are spinning disk drives, HDD drives. Now, these have been around forever. They're pretty standard. When I think of an HDD drive, I think of a drive that is being used not necessarily for editing, but instead for archiving. I'll give you a perfect example. All of our shows here at Videoguys are recorded every single week, and even after we compress the file, we're still looking at about a 10 gigabyte file that needs to be archived somewhere. So we put all of our shows onto an HDD drive, knowing that those are going to be there, they're going to be safe, and we're not really going to be editing off of them, so those are going to be fine. Typically, when you're looking at a spinning disk drive, you're going to get a larger amount of storage for a little bit cheaper per terabyte, again, because they're not quite as fast as SSD drives. You know, you'll probably be able to get a couple hundred megabytes per second transfer speed, but I wouldn't really be pushing any kind of serious editing off of an HDD drive. If you do want to do some editing off of a drive, that's when you're going to want to look at an SSD drive. These are solid state drives. Similar to the portable drives, these are going to be extremely fast. You know, again, if you're getting a SSD drive that has a Thunderbolt 3 port on the back of it, and you have a computer that has a Thunderbolt 3 port on it, you can take advantage of those 20 gigabytes per second, 40 gigabytes per second transfer speeds, and be able to actively edit, your 4K files off of the drive. Now, again, these are typically going to be a little bit smaller. Most manufacturers top out at 5 terabytes, 7 terabytes, and they're going to be a little bit more expensive because they are so much faster to edit off of. Next, I want to talk about RAID systems. Now, what is a RAID system? Typically, a RAID system is 2 or more spinning disk drives that are being used to either split your files so you increase your speed, or duplicate your files so you get redundancies and backups set in place. Now, let's break down 4 different versions of RAID that a RAID system can use. We're going to first talk about RAID systems that use 2 drives. So there's RAID 0 and there's RAID 1. Now, RAID 0 is often called striping. Now, when you are offloading your data onto a 2-bay RAID 0 system, you are splitting your data evenly between the 2 drives. So you have A1, A2, you have A3, A4. And because you're splitting the data across the 2 drives, you get a little bit faster read and write speed because you're essentially, splitting it up between the 2 drives. But if anything happens to one of those drives, you basically lose all of your files. So you kind of take that risk-reward kind of setup where you're getting higher transfer speeds, higher read and write speeds, but you have no redundancies in place. So you can do this again if you wanted to use this to edit and you wanted to use spinning disk drives, which are a little bit cheaper than SSD drives. This is one way you can achieve that. Make sure that you back up your footage on another device though, so if something happens to one of these drives, you're not, totally out of luck. Now, the other thing that you can do with 2 bays or 2 drives in a RAID system is RAID 1. Now, in RAID 1, what you're doing is you're sending all of your footage to both drives, and you're essentially duplicating your files. So if something happens to one of the drives in your RAID system, you have a complete and total backup. a lot of people will choose this if they, just want to have that peace of mind. And again, it's really great for archiving, and you have, not one backup, but you have two backups now. And so that's what RAID 1 is used for. Now, let's talk about RAID systems that require 3 or more drives. RAID 5 and RAID 6 are very similar. Basically, the way that RAID 5 works is that there will be 1 drive's worth of space set aside to have redundancies in place. Now, it's not going to be a complete backup, but there are going to be fail-safes in place with 1 drive's worth of space. So if 1 drive goes down, you do have some redundancies in place to be able to recover that drive. And it's the same thing with RAID 6, except now you have 2 drives worth of space. Typically, RAID 6 is going to be used in something that is, 5 or more bays in it, or disks or drives, whatever you want to call them. So we talked about the various forms of RAID that are available and are on the market. Now, when you're taking into consideration a RAID system and, splitting the RAID with RAID 0, or, completely duplicating with RAID 1 and RAID 5 having some redundancies in place, it can get a little bit confusing as to how much total space you need to be able to, fully support your workflow. So give us a call. We'll help you determine, which RAID system is good for you and how much storage in that RAID system you need would be. Now, the last section that we wanted to talk about was working with a team. Now, we're going to talk about NAS systems, but I really wanted to talk about Iodine Pro Data real quick, specifically because I was at Cinegear over the weekend and I got my hands on one, and this is a really cool shared storage system. So now this is a self-contained system that you can get in 12, 24, or 48 terabytes of NVMe SSDs. Now, what sets this apart is the fact that, as you can see in that picture there are 8 Thunderbolt 3 ports on the Iodine, which allows you to do some cool things. First and foremost, you can have up to 4 people accessing all of the data on this drive simultaneously. And if you use the multi-path, you're able to actually get upwards of gigabytes of transfer speed and not have any slowdown. Some manufacturers, when they're putting, when they're throwing out 5 gigabytes, read speed and 2.4 gigabytes of write speed, that's peak performance. Iodine has tested this, and that is, their average performance. When it's under load, they're getting 5.1 gigabytes per second read speed and about 2.4 gigabytes per second write speed with the latest update. And so this is just a system that kind of, again, time is money. And when you're having not only that much speed from one drive, but having multiple people connected to that drive, all editing together, it just makes it a perfect drive for DITs and anybody that is really looking to cut down on time in the editing room. Next, I do want to talk about NAS systems. A NAS system is network area storage, or network attached storage. And basically, the easiest way that I can describe this is, if you know anything about NDI and how your network switch is the hub that allows all of your NDI devices to communicate to each other, think of this the same way. You have a network attached system in the middle of all of your computers in your office or in your building, and all of them are able to share the storage that is located on the NAS system. Now, this is great if you have 10 people that all need to be able to work on these files. You got people that are graphic designers, you got editors, you got social media content creators. Everybody needs to be able to access all of these files. Well, now you can put the files on your network and be able to have everybody access them. And the great thing about these NAS systems is that they are offering more and more media management as well. So some things, and this isn't even really touching or scratching the surface of what you can do with a NAS system, but I wanted to talk about these 3 real quick that you can do with media management. The first being a lot of the NAS systems now have some level of like smart access or, access requirements or, whatever you want to call it. Basically meaning that you can put credentials in place to allow certain people to have access to certain files and other people not have access to those files. If somebody only needs to have data, they're doing data transfer, they don't need to have access to your videos or your pictures or anything like that. So limit them, they don't need it. Whereas, if you have a videographer or an editor on scene, well, they need to be able to have access to everything. One thing that I think is really cool is the bandwidth priority for critical workflows, and pretty much every NAS system has this. Again, if you have somebody that is just doing, data transfer, they are, just looking at PDFs for the most part, maybe a couple pictures here and there. They don't need to have crazy fast bandwidth. But if you need to have an editor, if you have an editor who's going to be editing, maybe your 4K 60 files, and they need to be able to offload, all of the content that they shot that day, and they need to offload 50, 60, 100 gigabytes worth of data. Well, now you can prioritize that computer to have more of the available bandwidth and say, okay, we're going to take a little bit of bandwidth away from our data entry people and give it to the people that actually need it. So that's something that's pretty cool too. And then the other thing is remote client software. So a lot of these network area storage systems are on the network, which means that they're connected to the internet in some cases. And if there's an update available, you don't necessarily have to go to the system and use a USB drive to update it manually. You can actually just update it from any computer that has access to the NAS with an admin control level. And like I said, this is just scratching the surface for what you can do with a NAS system. If you have more questions about this kind of stuff, or you want us to do a whole show dedicated to a NAS system, comment down below. We'll do a dedicated show to it. And if you have any questions about, what size do I need? What bandwidth do I need? What can I do with this or what can I do with that? Give us a call. We'll get you in contact with somebody at Facilis or Quantum or Avid, and we will find the right NAS for your workflow with the right amount of storage. So definitely give us a call, 800-323-2325. The last thing that I wanted to do was talk about the SanDisk Professional ProBlade ecosystem. Again, I'm going to give a real high-level overview. We talk about this all the time. Basically, we have been talking about going from on-camera to portable drives to working at your desk back at your computer. Well, with the SanDisk ProBlade ecosystem, you're able to do all of that in one, condensed ecosystem. So you can take your ProBlade transport and plug your SSD mag into it and plug that directly into your camera and record directly to the ProBlade mag that's in the transport. And then you can take that transport and ProBlade mag and plug it directly into your computer to offload your data at the end of the shoot. Or, because you have the ProBlade ecosystem, you could get something like the ProBlade Station, which allows you to take 4 ProBlade mags, plug them into a computer, and now you can offload 4 ProBlade mags all simultaneously and edit off of them and create a faux RAID system. Or if you wanted to, you could get an actual RAID system like the G-RAID mirror here, and which has a ProBlade mag slot built into it as well. Now you can plug your ProBlade mag directly into your 8, 16, 24 terabyte RAID system, and it just makes life that much easier by having an ecosystem that is all self-contained. So definitely check out the SanDisk Professional ProBlade ecosystem. One last recap. Today we talked about on-camera memory cards, card readers. We talked about portable drives, SSD drives, Atomos recorders, rugged drives. We talked about all of it. Part 3, we talked about being at your desk, spinning disk drives compared to solid state drives, and then talked a little bit about RAID systems and the different levels of RAID. And then we talked about working with your team with something like the Iodine Pro Data or a NAS system. Now, again, if you have any questions about anything that we talked about today, give us a call. 800-323-2325. And if there is a specific workflow that you want us to do a deep dive into, please comment down below and we will put it on our schedule. We'll reach out to whatever manufacturer you want more information on. We'll get them to join the show and do a deep dive. Again, my name is James. I'm a video production specialist here at Videoguys. We'll see you next Tuesday, 3 o'clock Eastern. Peace.
Videoguys is available Monday through Friday. Give us a call at 1-800-323-2325. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay connected with all of our updates. And you can like us on Facebook. Keep an eye out for our live videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.